Hello, and welcome back to Remembering Tuscola face, Facebook
Whatever it is.
webcast, whatever we're calling it. I threw myself off because anyway, I had
You
something
got
to
COVID.
say.
You got COVID. Your head's all
It's
screwed
mad
up.
cow, it's mad cow disease.
Yeah, you've had mad cow for years. That's why you write funny articles.
Anyway, we're back. I'm David Porter. I'm here with Mike Carroll and Bill Englehart. And Mike, you had something to say?
Yeah. I want to come out and I want to congratulate you publicly on your article. It's one of the best articles you've ever written. And what I really liked about it was real punchy. You ought to put this in the New York Times. It talked about COVID, and you had COVID,
Right.
and you talked about how, and it's an excellent article. You talked about how people have rebelled against the government saying wearing masks and rebelled against a lot of the science, and they refused to wear a mask. And you told them, well, grow up. I like that, grow up. Because if you have COVID, it's one thing if you don't care if you may die or get sick, but if you have COVID and cough into somebody that's got cancer or elderly, whatever, you could kill them. It's no different than the AIDS epidemic. When guys had AIDS, they knew if they had sex with somebody else, they could literally kill them. And they charged some guy that knowingly had AIDS and kept having intercourse. And I think it's like having the flu. If you have the flu, you don't walk up to people and just cough in their face. You cover your face. So you did a wonderful job of saying if you're a decent human being and care about people, and you have COVID or think you have COVID, then you wear a mask, stay home, be careful, protect. You don't want to protect yourself, protect others. It's a message I've been waiting for someone to say for years, and I thought it was a wonderful message, very strong, almost an editorial kind of thing.
Yeah.
Very good. Of course, you're thinking of your parents. You realize your parents could die if they get COVID, or people like Bill and I who are really old.
David, I'm sorry that you've been ill with the virus, and glad to see you today. Hopefully you're getting along a little better.
David told us before we were on the air that in the article he said it was like a minor cold. You want to amend that now, David, publicly?
Oh, it's horrible. Let me it was, well, when I wrote that, that's my Ramble Man column, and Jenny thought I was a little rough on people.
Oh no, it had to be said.
So that's why I threw in the line, tell me. She thought the comparing it to waving a loaded gun around and popping off rounds, she thought that people might get upset about that. And I said, well, tell me how it's any different. When if you know you have COVID, and that's why I stress, I'm not saying if you don't know you have COVID or whatever, but if you know you have COVID and you're out in public, you literally could kill somebody.
Yes.
And it's, so what's the difference between shooting a gun in the air, not knowing where that bullet's going to fall and whether it's going to hurt somebody, versus putting a virus out in the air? And then of course you've got the people that say, well, it's basically the flu. Well, yeah, and the flu kills people too. Well, if I have the flu, I'm also going to stay home and not try to spread it to other people. You still try to be careful. And the other thing that seems to have, to me, to kind of be reinforced with this is that COVID affects everybody differently. At where I probably got it, there's been at least 6 of us now that have come down with it, and our experience with it has all been different. Some people were sick for 1 day. I was sick for 3 days. There's one that's lingering on a little bit longer. I've had some lingering symptoms such as, just achiness and an odd odor in my nose all the time. And I've read that, that affects about, I don't remember the percentage, but, it's fairly common. It doesn't affect everybody that way. And it may take a couple months to get over that. So it just affects everybody differently. So whenever you try to categorize COVID as, oh, it's just this or it's just that or whatever, well, maybe that's what it was for you, but it may be something quite different for somebody else.
Yeah.
Especially the elderly.
But David, what I liked about your article was today there seems to be this moral equivalency virus. There seems to be this relativism that, well, you're too hard on people. That's not right. You shouldn't chew people out. Everybody's different. No, I think there are right and wrong, and people are afraid to bring out something's right and wrong. And I think if you have an infectious disease of any kind, and you don't stay away from people or take care of yourself, and you can get somebody else sick, even if it's not deadly, you cause them to lay on a couch for a week and be miserable. And that's suffering. So I think there's right and wrong, and I think there's morally right and there's morally wrong. And I thought it was a good old-fashioned tongue chewing, and it's something you don't hear anymore. Everything nowadays is morally equivalent, and it's crazy stuff. It's crazy stuff, So I thought it was old-fashioned. It was a kind of a chew out my mom would give me. And, you didn't hedge it, and so I enjoyed it. I thought let's get back to talking about everybody's so into themselves. It's the me generation. I want sensual pleasure. I want to do what I want to do. Everybody's so selfish. I thought it was a sermon all being so selfish and think of others.
Yeah, I try not to editorialize too much in that space because
you can't do that. If you do it every week, you get a little preachy and you turn people off. But just every now and then to throw one out there to remind people
it's usually
there's proper behavior and improper behavior.
Yeah.
Well, on a lighter note, I was glad that David was able to join a club.
Yeah.
COVID club.
The COVID club.
Yeah. COVID.
No one else to be in, but he got into a club.
Well, I think everybody's eventually going to probably get it. When I had it, they just came out with this Paxlovid that was a miracle. And there've been a lot of miracle drugs in the breakthrough of this, and that kind of helped get me through it. I don't want to do it again.
Well, since I had
I want to tell you, I just do a lot of funny tongue-in-cheek, a lot of puns, and you just let it rip. And I thought every now and then to let it rip is really good.
Well, we need you to get better so you're at the top of your game.
We need you to get better so you can do old photos again.
Yeah, because I didn't do any old photos this week. Just wasn't feeling up to it. But
you've got some old things.
But I did do a little research, and so that we could come up with a special edition. I don't have any music. Mike, can you maybe hum something?
I'm humming right now. Can you hear it?
Or
oh, that's good.
The Burmeister murders.
Oh, I see my new car's in. That was one of the prized cars of its days. That was an expensive car.
That's a 1929 Cord.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be conspicuous anywhere. Why would a hitman drive a car like that?
But he's a high paid hitman.
High paid ragtop. I believe his was a 4-door, but I'm not for sure. Seen by many.
I don't know. But Bill knows all about the Burmeister murders, including who did it. So we've been trying. How long have we been trying to pry it out of him, Mike?
I've been trying for 15 years to get a reveal, and I can't get it. He just wants to go to his grave. Maybe he'll he'll give instructions on his tombstone.
Maybe he doesn't really know, and he just wants us to think that he knows.
Well, I've done that before.
I will tell you this much, I have forgotten more than I know about it. It's been a long time ago. I believe that what you sent me this morning has the original piece in the Tuscola Review, doesn't it?
Well, I think the 1969
It's
article,
June of 1969.
but there were, so that was not for the murders happened in what, 1935?
They happened in July of 35.
So,
Hot, steamy. That's a Mattoon paper.
so this is the Mattoon paper that, from 1935 with the headline, "Two Tuscola men brutally slain." So let's kind of go back and talk about just how it happened. You got the target apparently was Ed Burmeister, and his brother John, who was what, a little over 20 years older than him.
Yes, much older.
Just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Yep.
So the rumor that I've always heard is that Ed was having an affair with a married woman.
Well, see now, our good friend Howard Konar would say he had always heard that his great uncle had a gambling debt.
Okay.
That's the way Howard imparted it to me. And then we had further discussion. But if you think about some of these murder mysteries, and this book that Mike recently gave me is so good to read, John Sanford's murder mysteries are always fantastic. There's only a few things that cause someone to be in that situation.
Well, it apparently was conducted by a hitman or a hitmen.
Mm-hmm.
And what I've always heard is that was they were hired. So someone would have hired them.
And so obviously they would have to have connections to hire someone to come from wherever they came from. Did they come from Indianapolis? Did they come from Detroit?
Kansas City.
Kansas City. That's the wrong way because they came in from Newman. They came on Route 36. He came in on Route 36. That was well known. Right there as you go into Newman, uptown in Newman, on the right-hand side before the little city park used to be a little gas station. And he went in there and he asked again how far it was to Tuscola. That came out in the original WCIA investigative reports. And we had a tape of that at East Prairie School. I received it from WCIA because I was fascinated by it. If you back all the way up, in a nutshell, what happened was Tuscola paper comes out with this article. I read this article and it's, wow, this is really something. And why wasn't this solved? And who did this? And what was this all about? And I went to work and I was working one afternoon with an older gentleman. And
I'm not that much older.
Yeah, true. And so he was listening to me talking about this article. And I went on and on and on like I can do. And finally he said, there's the piece in the paper right there.
This is the article you're talking about.
Huh?
This is the article you're talking about.
That's the piece I'm talking about.
This is in 1969.
1969, right. And I'm working a decaf. I'm up there in the head house with this gentleman, and I'm going on about it. And finally, he's had enough, and he said, "I'm gonna tell you what happened." And I remember it very well. I went, "Really?" He said, "Yeah, I can tell you." And I said, "Well, how would you know about it?" He said, because I was Ed Burmeister's best friend. And that was it. And so he talked to me, swore me to secrecy, which I've done a pretty good job of withholding because now I've forgotten some of the main keys, so to speak. But it was such history that once that was done, and then Bob wrote about it in the paper. Bob was sent a letter at one time. He was contacted by mail and said, enough. That's the end of it. You're not going to be telling this story or this rumor or whatever you're concocting here. So Bob went quiet on it. He was silent. Bob knew when to be quiet.
David, if you were digging in a murder and someone sent you a thing and said enough, that'd just make you double down, wouldn't it?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
That's all a reporter needs to hear.
Yeah.
It's like Watergate, that's the more those guys got threatened, the more they knew they were close to the nerve center.
I wonder if I'll get a letter. Maybe we'll all get letters.
No, I don't think we're going to get a letter, but I will say this, that's 1969. That's what happened. I did some more reading. I watched the tape. But in the 80s, when I was teaching school, I thought, get the kids a little bit excited, something different. So I said something about this murder case in Tuscola that happened long ago, and it never was solved. And the kids became very curious. And they said, how did this all transpire and everything? And I said, I really don't know, but we do have the chance to read about it if you old papers. And at that time, they had papers up in the library. And also that tape from WCIA, which I found out that they still had it in their archives, and I got that. But I had kids go home, go to the grandmothers, go to the grandfathers, and suddenly this all just came about. They were able to figure out what had actually transpired from all the paperwork that you've acquired now out of your.
So what did they figure out? What did they figure out?
Hey, it's for you to figure out.
Well, they've already figured it out.
Everyone knew about it. Everyone in 1935 knew exactly what had happened, what had transpired, and it was one of those subjects that you just didn't talk about anymore. It was unfortunate for John Burmeister walking down Washington Street and his brother taking the gas out from the station to this car, and him seeing his brother and asking him to ride out there with him.
So let's back up a little bit and tell people, how that went down. There was this Ed Burmeister worked at a garage.
Yeah, the Parkway Garage.
And
the manager was Tom Haynes, old Tom Haynes. Young Tom Haynes married us. Old Tom Haynes and Mary Haynes ran the.
Married you and I?
No, Mary Haynes ran the Poplar Cafe. But we went to church with Tom and Mary Haynes. So I'm reading the paper years ago in the 69 or whatever. And Tom Haynes is the one that answered the phone and actually talked to the Cord car driver.
Yeah, so there was a Cord car that was in the picture we showed at the first with the murders.
Yeah.
And now one of the accounts said it was a cream colored car and one said it was blue. So I don't know what color it was.
Kind of a cream blue.
You know what? When I think one of the last ones that I ever talked about, and it hasn't been that many years ago actually, was Berlin Obrecht. Berlin Obrecht's parents had what was the Myers Meat Market on the corner there of South Central and Washington, just across the railroad tracks on the left. And the street was narrow then. Berlin Obrecht was playing outside on Little Boulevard, which was bigger at that time. And he was always interested in cars. He made a career out of fixing cars.
Back right across the street. He put
Right. But as a little boy, here comes this big Ford car, and it turned, Berlin told me, he turned that wheel and he looked right down at him as he turned that wheel, looked him right in the eye. And Berlin said what he remembered about him was, of course, he had on a hat, but he had a mustache. He remembered that. And that car, that was a very special car.
So it was an unusual car, so people noticed the car.
Yes.
But then
It was all over Tuscola.
Then a phone call came into the garage, says, I'm out of gas. Could you send somebody with 10 gallons of gas?
Yeah.
And the location was about where USI located. And about, some accounts say 3 miles, one says 3.5, one says 4 miles west of Tuscola. And so Ed Burmeister, the garage truck was apparently broke down and borrowed a van and started taking the gas out to him and saw his brother John walking and stopped and asked him if he wanted to ride along. And John said that he would. Now, apparently there's someone else there.
Do you know where he made the phone call from?
From the billiard hall.
Right, catty corner from what is Brett Atkinson's business now. Used to be the old corner grocery. It's an empty lot. It's parking for the senior citizens.
Right.
That was the real mine. That was it was a pool hall.
So that's where the phone call originated.
And the Ford car guy went in there and called across the street and asked for the gas to be delivered west of town.
Yeah. Now there's, let me take a second just here, or I'll just pause for a second.
Too tired.
Find a grade.
Okay, so Jerry Jones said his neighbor David Dean Garrett, before he passed away, said that he was at the garage when the Burmeisters got the call for aid, and rather than going with them, went home. So he would have been with Ed and John as well, had he not decided to go home instead. So anyway, the Burmeisters take the gas out to this stranded car out on the highway on 36 and ended up getting shot and killed and robbed. You know, some of the reports say, well, they were robbed, their wallets were missing, wouldn't have had much money on them, but maybe
this is the height of the Depression. They wouldn't have had hardly any money on it.
But maybe it was, you know, partly to try to make it look like a robbery. And different accounts on how many times they were shot. How many times were they shot, Bill?
Well, there's been reports that they were each shot twice. But once again, one of the people that I talked to, and I talked to a lot of people that were back then alive and well. Fred Schrader received a call that evening from Tack Green, 2 young undertakers. And Fred told me that Tack needed help with this. And his tale to me was very simply, you would think that with a 6-shot revolver that you would shoot somebody once, maybe twice. And it was reported in the paper at one time, or another area, that it was twice, each was shot twice. Fred Schrader told me Ed Burmeister was shot 11 times. John Burmeister was shot 5 times.
Well, that seemed like a little overkill for a hitman, doesn't it?
Well, here's the whole point. Someone was trying to make a point.
Well, and there also were reports of 2 sets of footprints leading back from the car. The Ford car may not have been the only car there. someone else may have gone out, and maybe someone to verify, yes, that's Ed Burmeister.
Well, that's all possible. I don't know where you got that one from. We do know that Romine brothers, Ned and his brother, were walking home from Tuscola out west out there by Ficklen, Chicken Bristle. And they walked by the car and didn't see anything unusual. Well, that's because the bodies were inside, slumped down.
Right.
But I didn't hear that about the second car tracks. Now, understand that that's a hard road.
Not car tracks, footprints.
Well, I don't know. There's still a hard road. The car's parked right on the hard road or side of the road. The whole deal there is very simply, someone may have seen what had happened or looked in the car and seen that, and then they would say, "Whoa, I don't want any part of this. I'm leaving."
That could be too. But there's also a report where the sheriff thought there was as many as 4 people involved.
Clark Edwards was the sheriff, and he went to the person that told me the story. And that was the first person they went to. And they wanted to know who they thought had killed the Burmeisters, in particular, Ed.
Yeah.
And from there, it goes on to Dr. Boylston, who is the coroner. I mean, there's a whole bunch of people that are gone now that, back then they knew. Well, they're all gone. They're all gone. And I've literally forgotten some of the players. Now, when you're talking, you said 4 people involved. Is that what you're saying?
Well, there was one report of that.
The sheriff said 4.
The sheriff thought there was as many, and that's based on that there was a group of 4 guys stopped in at a tavern and were acting suspicious, and they thought that might have been them.
That's pretty interesting. That's interesting.
They also said that the car had a Kansas license plate on the front and a California license plate on the rear.
That I don't remember. I don't remember that. I know they looked for it all the way across to the Illinois River. They never did find a Ford car.
There's a nationwide manhunt. The car stopped at a filling station at Pearson Station. Gerald Hines was the attendant, and he said the guy came in and wanted oil, but apparently said he had plenty of gas. Well, he would have had the 10 gallons of gas that the Burmeisters delivered.
Mm-hmm.
But he was having trouble with the car, and
running low on oil.
Right, yeah. So he got the oil. He described him as being 5 feet 7 inches tall. Hey, that could be me.
That's what we were thinking.
Well, that's the big reveal.
Mm-hmm.
Weighed 135 pounds, dark, closely trimmed mustache, wearing
Smoke a cigar?
It didn't say about. He said, "I've been choking the car for the last 3 miles." Then he ordered 2 quarts of oil and asked the distance to Chicago. Now the Chicago may have been to throw off the hunt. He may have continued.
Yeah, because he's certainly going the wrong way for Chicago back then, wasn't he?
Right.
I thought they did I thought they actually zeroed in on about 4 chords they thought were possible, and they actually interviewed all the owners of those 4 chords. Because it's a pretty rare car.
Yeah, one of the reports said they basically tracked down every chord ever built, and there were 4 in New York that had been stolen, so they weren't able to track those down. Behind said that he had not noticed any blood on the car or the driver. Let's see. It says officials were searching for more than one man. Reported that 2 sets of footprints led from the spot in the field where the bodies were left in the car. So I think it sounded like the bodies were loaded back into the car the Burmeisters were driving, and then it was driven into a field. Wasn't just left.
Was there not much traffic on 36 back then?
It says that one of the reports said that traffic was pretty heavy on 36. So I don't know how they would have done all that and nobody drive by and see anything.
Well, originally that was on a hot July evening. Maybe people had come into the candy kitchen. But the fact of the matter is that it was not heavily traveled, and there was no time spent once they got to the scene. The murderer, he was quick in his duty.
Well, there was also reports that the suspect had a piece of adhesive tape on his lip, and they thought that was a form of disguise, in that if you saw him, that's a trick I've heard about that bank robbers have used sometimes, is you put something on your face that catches someone's attention, they focus on that, and then when they're asked to describe the guy, they can't really think of anything else. They don't notice any scars or moles or anything else because they're focused on that piece of tape or Band-Aid or whatever it is. But there's this article from 1935 too was speculating that if the guy who made the phone call was the killer, he would have had to have gone out ahead of the Burmeisters. He would have risked them getting there at the same time, or speculation that the card may have been there already and a second person may have called.
No, didn't have a cell phone, did he?
No, it didn't have a cell phone, but it had.
Somebody else could have called.
But someone else could have called, made the call.
The guy who hired him could have called.
You've got you have to believe me when I say he was working at the garage. They had to find transportation to get out there and deliver the gas. So he's
so he's got a little time.
He's got time. He's got plenty of time, believe me. The caller set it up.
Caller couldn't even find Tuscola.
Well, he found Tuscola. He just
how do you really went
taking his time.
Jump out there and stuff.
Part of the mission.
Yeah. I'll look at the crate registries to figure it out.
Mike may be fortunate upon my demise to have all the information. I could will that to you, couldn't I? Of course, by then you'll probably be out of your mind anyway, so it won't matter.
Yeah, no, I was state's attorney. I had enough murders unsolved. Like I say, when I was state's attorney in 76 or 77, I think, I remember we sent somebody to prison on the day they came into court. They went to prison that same day. Bill remembers that. And there's letters to the editor from a relative of mine that said that was the fastest thing we've ever seen happen since the cord flew out of Tuscola after killing 2 people. I thought, what the hell are they talking about? So the older folks were still talking about the murder.
You know, I went one night up on Main Street to visit with, because I wanted to ask him about it, Bus and Bernice Martin. Bernice went, oh yeah, oh, you knew all about that. People matter-of-factly knew about it. I had a 6th grade girl go to stay all weekend with her grandparent up by Pasoto. And she comes in to school after we'd gone through some of this stuff, and she goes, I know who it was and everything. She just, oh
Well,
God, she was blabbing.
You understand the ethics back then. I mean, up until about 1970 or 80,
Right.
in the state of Texas, if you caught your wife and her lover in bed, you could legally shoot them up until a certain, I forget when the law changed, but
Here's the part, and this is from a 1935 article. It's a belief that 4 men participated in the killings was expressed by Sheriff Clark Edwards after he learned that 4 men stopped at a tavern 35 miles southeast of here shortly after the brothers were slain. The proprietor of the tavern told Sheriff Edwards the men asked him for soap, washed their hands and arms, and then drove away.
Southeast of Tuscola?
Southeast.
Never heard that one.
Yeah, that was
well,
in,
I'm sure they got all kinds of reports of suspicious.
that was in Daily Illini, July 17th, 1935.
Oh, there's all kinds of things that came up.
I
know.
I just wanted to mention the prevailing ethics at the time, that if in fact Burmeister was engaged with married women, maybe undermining the marriage was considered a sanctified union.
Right.
Religion was still pretty high, people's ethics, and to undermine a marriage through something like he might have been doing is really morally wrong. Back when morals were morals. And I would say that if in fact that's what happened, I can understand why most people at the time maybe didn't think it was right he was killed, but on the other hand thought, well, he was messing with fire.
Right.
Yeah, they didn't want to come out and say anything.
And then
today they'd come out and say something, I think.
And then I can throw this curveball in there. And what if Howard did know from the family history, so to speak, that it was gambling debts that had amounted to a certain, total, and he was taken care of for that. It seems like that's rather trivial compared to something else.
Yeah, you're not getting your money back.
No, you're not getting your money back.
I thought Howard wound up liking your theory more.
I'll put it this way. He kind of looked at me funny.
My aunt, by the way, married. Yeah, there's a nice cream color. If you blend those two together, you get kind of a cream blue.
Yeah.
Now those are beautiful.
Here's just some of the headlines from 1935 in different papers. It was big news. Now this is this map is earlier. This is a Sanborn map from 1929.
Yeah, the number 10 is about where the garage is.
So the garage was there. So that's about where Corner Grocery was.
It's about that number 10, right? That building.
Atkinson's shop is.
And Caddy Corner, southeast, right there is the pool hall.
That'd be that's where the phone call was made. So they would have been able to see.
They could see.
Yeah, line of sight. What kind of activity.
They knew that I keep saying they. He knew it was all set up. He had stopped at Mills drugstore on Main Street. The court car was witnessed by several because obviously it was it was unusual.
But if the guy driving the Cord car is the guy that made the phone call, that Cord car would have been parked right outside.
Close.
Yeah.
You would have thought that the people from the shop could look out the window and seen it, probably.
No. Tom Haynes was up late at night. It was very upsetting. Mary and Tom told me, oh boy, it was so upsetting. Tom had talked to the guy, arranged for the gas to go out, had arranged for Burmeister to deliver it.
Was this nighttime or dark or when?
Evening.
Everybody was still open?
It was late, and I don't know how late. I can't remember now. how late
Did
it
it-
was.
did
It
it-
wasn't dark.
Did he describe the car? They say it's a blue Cord or whatever, needs gas.
I don't know Tom didn't say that. It was someone that needed gas west
Nope.
of
So
Tuscola.
maybe he didn't describe the car, David, so nobody would know
Yeah.
what to look
Yeah.
at.
So then
Now,
we have,
go back to this photo. Can you believe Bill and I were shocked that someone could drive a car? Go back to the cemetery photo there. The other way. There you go. Bill and I were out of the cemetery the other day, and there's probably a little bit of room to drive a car out there, but somebody just for a photographic purpose found a cord and drove it out there just to demonstrate. Now, how they found that cord just for that shot, something else.
Mhm. Yeah,
Beautiful
there's
car.
some,
there it is.
I found the negatives from that photo shoot.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
big long machine.
that was a car.
Well, I think you might as well put it in the folder with the Kennedy assassination, which we've watched for the last week or two. It's just one of those things you'll never have a final answer to.
John was born in 1879
He was much older.
and
And-
Ted was born in 1900.
And the brother next to Edward, when he was born, there's 3 years difference. That was Howard's mother's dad. His name was Fred.
You know, my aunt, Jean Burmeister, married Burmeister. Jean
Which
Burmeister.
one she married?
I can't remember, but she got divorced, and I know her son Larry always talks about he was no good and nobody missed him.
That car today be worth probably what, $250,000?
Oh my gosh, that blue one easily. That's a jewel, both of them. Yeah, that was right up there with almost a Duesenberg. That was they always say that was a doozy. That's saying that's a doozy. That's based on the Duesenberg, that really nice car. Cord was top of the line. Rich guy's car. Hitman's car.
Mm-hmm.
Well, David, you gonna write a little book about it? If Bill,
I'm not. No, I don't know who did it. Bill
Well,
won't
Bill,
tell me who did it.
Like I said,
Bill.
all of those things that you sent me today, which I didn't get through all of them, and now my phone's done taking it off because I looked at email on my computer, and that's gone too. I'm going to have Kelly work on my phone again.
Bill's giving you a roadmap how to get there, David.
If you start
If you quit-
beginning and keep going,
If you take a week's vacation and really hit it, you can get it.
I think he's narrowed it down. That's interesting that Clark Edwards would say about these 4 men.
Well, he just saying there was people at a tavern were acting funny and washing their hands and stuff. It could have been
Yeah.
railroad workers, could have been out hunting deer.
Oh, yeah, that's just,
Anytime you get a big crime like that, you get
yeah.
100 leads. If you look at
Yeah.
the Kennedy assassination, they got 1,000 leads.
So was it over an affair or was it over gambling debts?
No, that's a question that shall be asked or forever, I suppose. One thing family lore says gambling.
If it was a
Otherwise,
gambling debt,
there's some rumors out there that would say something else.
if it was a gambling debt, who would he owe the money to?
Well, that's true. We're playing nickels and dimes in the back alley, throwing craps. I don't know.
Everything I heard was that this guy was a Romeo. And
It's a wonder you never got shot.
well, I never had his talents.
Oh.
Yeah, I would say he was a known Romeo, and I would say once again the ethics back in those days.
I'd say it's
A guy getting himself shot messing with certain guys' wives back in those days. Today, of course, you go to divorce court. Today the ethics are different today. But back then, that was a deadly combination.
Well, I don't think we're any closer to solving it today than we were yesterday.
Well, I know you gave it a good run.
And you have some information there. I just wonder if WCIA still got that tape.
David, if you get a letter saying enough, then we know we're hot on the trail.
Yeah, we're hot on the trail.
Bill will manufacture a letter.
I would bet you right now, I'd bet you right now $1,000 that Bob Hastings had a pretty good idea who did it and was fishing around. And
you know what?
And I bet you Bob knew who. I bet you Bob.
I think he was.
I bet you Bob knew who sent him the enough letter too.
He was. David, I took one senior girl. She was doing a report at the high school on it, and I drove her around Tuscola, and she had the articles. She'd copied the articles and everything, and from that article, or from the articles, and just driving around Tuscola back then, several years ago, she was able to come up with a pretty good idea of who. I also had, or I know kids that did research. Doug Dietrich, for his daughter, went to the courthouse and got the 2 death certificates. They did an Illinois history project at East Prairie that won a first place on the Burmeister murder. And they put some of the pictures in the car and all that. But I don't believe there's any Burmeisters living around. There's relatives, I'm sure, of Burmeisters living around, but Howard was pretty close to it because his mother's dad was the little bit older by 3 years brother of Ed. And Howard says, that's a story I always heard.
But it sounds like Ed was the target, not John.
Very much so. Very much so. John, was his occupation a custodian? He was an older fellow.
Right, he was a custodian.
He was an older fellow, and he had family and everything. And by older, he was late or mid 50s. That was older back then.
Now it's young.
Yeah, now it's young.
75 is young.
And he just happened to be passing by, and his brother said, "Hey, you want to ride with me? I got to deliver some gas." No, that's coming from old Tom Haynes told Ed Burmeister where to go with the gas.
So if my younger brother sees me walking down the street and asks me if I want to go with him,
So better not push your luck.
I should not go.
No, that's why.
Because he was a bit of Romeo too.
Well, I would not ride with him if I were you.
Yeah.
But
I'm telling you, it's different today. I'm telling you, it's different today. The ethic is different.
I'm going to make Mike ride in the back of the truck from now on. I hadn't thought about all this.
You just don't read much today about if someone's unfaithful, they put out a contract on somebody else. You just don't see it very often. Often, if they kill their spouse, it's because they want the money, or the divorce. That's easier than going through the divorce routes to kids or something like that.
Shawshank Redemption.
Yeah, there's other motives today, like money or who gets the kids, or child custody.
So Bill, without disclosing secret you've sworn to, surely you can tell us what the kids came up with.
What the kids come up with. That's public knowledge. That was in class.
Kids came up with answers. A lot of times I told them, enough. We don't need any more.
Oh, you wrote the enough letter. All the kids went home and there was a letter saying enough.
Enough. Back then, in the 80s, the grandparents who were growing up in that period, they knew what their folks had said. It was just common knowledge.
You know, David, one of the problems is I've wanted to write a book about a long time has passed, but around the same time, my dad's uncle, Doc Emil Carroll, was most famous murderer in Douglas County, charged with killing the hired hand McAllister. Chicago Tribune headlines. Judge Sherrick, actually, when I became state attorney, gave me the grand jury transcript, all the newspaper articles from the Tribune all around. He was found not guilty. They went through 278 male. There were no female jurors at 278 men. Lott Herrick defended him, and he's found not guilty. And I've wanted to write that story, but my dad said it's still very sensitive in the family, so I had to wait till everybody died, and then everybody died, and then I bumped into his son, Bruce Carroll, up in Champaign, one of the nicest guys in the world. Wonderful, wonderful guy, HR guy, Carl. Oh, well, Christ, gee, many Christmas, I can't write it now. Bruce is alive. And then I met Bruce's kids. So the problem is, you know, you're going to embarrass somebody.
Yeah.
When you resurface this stuff.
And I realize that, so I would never.
We don't know who's out there.
Publicly.
We don't know who's out there that would be
well,
mortified by it.
Yeah, well,
or injured, injured,
greatly injured by it, and would not appreciate it. So
anyway, Bill's going to take it to his grave, I'm afraid. We'll have to read.
Well, I think though, David, as I told you, you have to go through the information and you have to start asking yourself questions about what you've read or what you've seen.
Well, just give David a couple of questions he should ask himself when he reads it.
He just has to read.
So
I've read all these articles. There's nothing.
Names, and you have to read it and read it and read it. And you have to look at pictures, and you have to start putting something together.
And you have to look at the history of gravestones.
Find a grave. Might help.
Well, I looked on the Find a Grave.
Is that enough
pictures
clues?
of the graves?
Is that enough clues for you, David?
No.
Sorry, David.
Not enough for me either.
So
we had a lot of fun with it. You know, I just remembered Kristen Berg and Elizabeth Lincoln worked on this too. I wonder if they remember anything.
Frank probably knows. Frank probably knows.
Frank probably knew because of his
law firm.
Well,
his law firm knew everything back then.
Well, probably, yeah. Right? George Nichols?
Yeah, they knew.
Yeah, they knew.
I wish we could dig Bob Hastings up again. He'd be a great interview on this.
Bob would be quiet.
Yeah.
He did. I can't do anything to him. Well, David, anyway.
Sorry, I can't be of more help to you, David, but you've found a wealth of information there to look at.
Yeah.
Aren't you interested in it? I mean, you know.
Well, I am, but there's nothing here that has any names that I would sound suspicious as to.
Well, you know what? I was trying to think. When did Tony Travis graduate from high school? Tony Little now.
No idea.
Do you remember Tony? She works as first aid back.
Yeah.
She in relationship
80s?
to you in school.
80s?
She was in the 80s.
Younger, I think.
Okay. She did a report on. Pretty sharp gal.
Okay.
And like I said, I had school kids walk in the door.
So we interviewed Tony Little, Elizabeth Lincoln, Grace Dietrich.
I don't think you need to do that.
They all figured it out.
I think Bill Hill presented it in some way, shape, or form.
Bill
They did.
know.
They did. No, he doesn't know. He doesn't know.
Well,
Bill
David,
doesn't know.
Now, you want to know who the guy was that told me? I'll tell you that much.
Okay.
On that afternoon, sitting up there at the head house at DeKalb, where he's grading corn, Raymond Stokes
and he's dead.
Yeah, he's long dead.
Well, I can't talk to him.
No, you can't talk to,
There's only
you
one.
can't talk to,
There's only one live person you can talk to, and he's right here.
yeah, the Hayneses. You can't talk to Tom and Mary Haynes. You can't talk to Fred Schrader. You can't talk to Raymond Stokes.
Did you make that, David?
Yeah, I made it I made it just while we were talking.
That's really good.
That's really good.
I would love to have that car.
Yeah.
Yeah, wouldn't you?
Look at that thing. That thing is the concourse. That's been brought back. That's probably better than when it was new. Look at the chrome replated. Oh my gosh.
Front wheel drive.
Yeah, look at the gear. Is that what that is down there? That
Down here.
yeah, looks like a gearbox down there where the bottom below the radiator.
Yeah.
That's where the transaxle was probably for the front wheel drive. I'll just have to. Let me just go ahead, David. I'm going to check something out.
David, I will tell you this much. When you brought up this idea about these four guys, that was very interesting to me, because I think I can safely say that they weren't involved. But the idea of four guys, that comes to mind. And if there were four guys that happened to be involved in setting this whole thing up, if that's the case, then I've totally forgotten two. One, possibly, and one, definitely.
David,
There you go. That's about the best I can do.
David, the average price of a Cord 812 in 1937 is $171,000.
Well, this is a 1929 Cord.
I know that was a 37, so it might even be.
It's supposed to be a 35, I thought. I don't know if that was ever given, was it? 35 or whatever?
No, I think they said it was a 1929.
It might have been 29.
Here's a 37 Cord 812 supercharged Phaeton, Amelia Island, for $184,000.
I was also thinking, well, I guess 35, 29 would only have been 6 years old.
Well, that's sharp, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I guess I won't be buying one, David.
You're not gonna buy one?
I don't think so. Let me see.
Well, you might.
Well, I think this was fun.
David, what year are we going to be looking at next year or next week on the photos? You got any?
Well, I've got a whole bag full of photos.
You know what year it is?
No, different years. Just a potpourri of photos. Haven't scanned them yet. But I got I can't reach it. Probably got 100 negatives. I won't use them all next week.
Hey, David, would you do me a favor and send me that again, what you sent this morning?
Yeah,
I would appreciate it.
I'll do that right after we sign off. Anything else?
Well, I hope you feel better. I've had a cold. I'm about 2.5 weeks into a cold, and I've still got crap in my throat, but something's going around. I tested negative for COVID, so it's sickness time right now. So I hope you feel better. Also, I hope that you getting the COVID is proof that cigar smoking doesn't prevent COVID.
Yeah, it doesn't. So
We were hopeful.
We thought maybe it did. That's quite a show. That's quite a show. That car right there, that's a rare one. That's probably $250,000.
So this concludes our episode of the Burmeister murders. And if you want to know for certain who did it, Bill Englehart's cell phone number is
Dude. We'll so many wrenches in this story that you brought up a couple of things today that I had no clue about that.
So,
I really didn't.
well, we'll see if any of our
Tuscola's Kennedy assassination.
Yeah.
we'll see if any of our viewers can add any insight.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, David, I hope you're feeling better. Are
wish
you,
you well.
are you over the worst of it, David?
Oh yeah,
Yeah, he's better.
I'm out of quarantine today.
Well, good, great article. I really got a kick out of it.
Well,
Every
thanks.
now and then, just rear up and kick some people's butts.
Hmm.
Tomorrow's December 1st. Wow.
Yep. Okay. We'll see you next week on Remembering Tuscola.
Thank you, David.